Hi, in today's lecture, we will learn about the roots and the zeros of a polynomial. So what is a zero of a polynomial? It is just a number a which will make the polynomial zero if we substitute that a value into the x of the polynomial. What about the root? The root is written in the form of x equal to a, where a is just that zero. So this root will make the polynomial equal to 0. In general, if x equal to a is a root of a polynomial, then the equation px will equal to 0. Then x minus a is a factor of px. It's like reversing this process. X equal to a, bring a to the left side, so x minus a equal to 0. So this is the factor of px. As an example, if we have x cubed minus 2x squared minus 5x plus 6 as our polynomial, we can factorize this polynomial and you get three linear factors, x minus 1 times x plus 2 times x minus 3. Then the zeros are the numbers, only the numbers which will make this polynomial 0, which is 1, negative 2, and 3. How did we get these zeros? It's just by equating each of these factors equal to 0, like this. So if we write in this form, these are what we call as the zeros. It's just the numbers. And what will be the roots is, if we equate this polynomial to 0, the roots would be x equal to 1, x equal to negative 2, and x equal to 3 are the roots. So when you write x equal, these are what we call as the roots. But if you just write the numbers without the x, these are what we call as the zeros. And what about these forms? These are what we call as the factors, if we write in terms of brackets. Okay, let's look at example 1. Find all the zeros of polynomial px, given that x plus 2 is a factor of px. Remember, zeros is just the number that makes this whole polynomial equal to 0. And one of the factor is given. So since we know x plus 2 is one of the factor, we have to use long division to find the other two factors. Okay, just a little bit of explanation. This is our polynomial. And then we know one of the factor. We need to find another two linear factors. So how to find these other two linear factors? Since these two factors are multiplied with this x plus 2 factor, so just leave the one that we want to find on the right side and bring this to the left side. So as you can see, we have to divide px with x plus 2. So that's why x plus 2 had become our divisor to find our next two factors. So you have learned this in tutorials. So to factorize completely, you have to divide with one of the factor. Is a factor. Okay, so when you divide this, remember the steps. How to divide by using long division. This is 3x cubed, divide with x. What you get is, you can cross this out, 3x squared. So write 3x squared on top. Next, you multiply 3x squared with the divisor 1 by 1. 3x squared times x is 3x cubed. 3x squared times 2 is 6x squared. Then you have to subtract these two. Write a bracket there to reduce careless mistakes. Make sure your first term is 0. So 3x cubed minus 3x cubed is 0. So if it's not 0, something is wrong with your choice of quotient term. And then 11x squared minus 6x squared is equal to 5x squared. bring your next term downwards, and then find what's your next quotient term. Remember, it's just right. Divide these two, cross everything out, you have 5x. Write that as your quotient term. Multiply 5x with the divisor. 5x times x is 5x squared, plus 2 times 5x is 10x. And then you have to subtract these two. Write a bracket there. 5x squared minus 5x squared must equal to 0. If it's not, something is wrong with your quotient term. And then 12x minus 10x is equal to 2x. Bring 4 downwards. Next, 2x. We want to eliminate 2x. So 2x divide with the divisor, which is x. What you get is just 2. So write 2 at your quotient term there. So 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 2 is 4. And now you have nothing left as your remainder. So if your remainder is 0, remember what this means. This means your quotient term will be your factors. Okay, so now we can just write down according to our formula, which is quotient times the divisor plus the remainder. Remainder is 0. So what's left here is just 3x squared plus 5x plus 2. You can factorize this by using your calculator. So 3x plus 2 times x plus 1. And what will be the zeros? Remember, in terms of brackets, these are what we call as the factors. But for zeros, you have to only take out the numbers. So the numbers are just negative 2 over 3, negative 1, and negative 2. So these are what we call as the zeros. Do not write x equal in front, because once you write x equal in front of the zeros, these are what we call as the roots. So it's not the root. The question is asking for zeros. Okay? Now let's look at example 2. Show that negative 4 is a zero of this polynomial. So remember, whenever it's a zero, it means that this, when we substitute this value negative 4 into the x, the polynomial is equal to 0. So that's how you show. Just substitute in negative 4 into the x, and your final answer is 0. You have to write a little bit of conclusion showing why it is a 0 by stating that since p, polynomial, when you substitute negative 4 inside it, is equal to 0, so negative 4 is a 0 of px. So it's very simple on how to show it's a 0 of a polynomial. You also do the same thing if the question wants you to show that x equal to negative 4 is a root of the polynomial, or x plus 4 is a factor of the polynomial. Do the same method. Now I want you to try out example 3, and then we will discuss in the next lecture. Now example 4. Factorize px completely and write its zeros. Look at this example. There is no factor given. Remember, to factorize completely, we need to at least know one factor, where that factor will be its divisor. At least one factor is known. But for this question, one factor is not even given. So how to show and factorize this polynomial completely? Even though you can press your calculator to find what is the factors or what are the roots of a cubic polynomial, but that's not the right way. Please don't just simply use the answers from your calculators. You have to use try and error method. Let me show you how. To determine one of the factors of the polynomial, you have to start by trying out the numbers one by one. So let's say you choose negative 1. You try to substitute negative 1 inside and see whether it's equal to 0 or not. If it's not equal to 0, that means negative 1 is not one of the zeros, not one of the roots, and not one of the factors. So we have to try with another number. You can try any numbers, but try with the simpler numbers first. -1, 1, 2, or 0. Just write it out. That's why we call this method as try and error. And then substitute 1 inside and equate it to a number. But since the value is not equal to 0, so it's also not one of the factors of px. Try again until you find the answer is equal to 0. For example, when you substitute -2, you found out that the answer is equal to 0. So please be smart, even though you will know the values here just by looking at your calculator. But please don't straight away write this line. You have to use try and error method. So please show other numbers and show that the other numbers are not equal to 0. And then you write one of the answer that you get from your calculator by using EQN and then degree 3. So please show some steps saying that these other numbers are not equal to 0, so they are not the factors. Only then you substitute the values that you get from your calculator by EQN degree 3, substitute that one of the roots and show that it's equal to 0, and then conclude that x plus 2 is one of the factor of px. After that, once you know x plus 2 is one of the factor of px, it can be any other factors because we know that we might have 3 factors here. So you might get the other factors there, it's up to you. But once we know one of the factor of px, then we do long division. So to do long division, it's just like 6x cubed divided with x. So you get 6x squared. Multiply 6x squared with the terms 1 by 1. 6x squared times x is 6x cubed. And then 6x squared times 2 is 12x squared. Subtract these two. Make sure you write your brackets there. The first term must be 0. And you're left with x squared. Bring 0x downwards. Oh yeah, why do we have 0x here? Well, it's because our polynomial is not consisted of all of the degree terms. So since the highest degree is power 3, the next one is x power 2, and then followed by x power 1, and the constant. We have the coefficient for x power 3, we have the coefficient for x power 2, but there's no coefficient for x power 1, so we have to write 0 there. And then the constant behind. Okay, so just bring 0x downwards. So x squared divided with x is just x. Write it as your quotient term. And then x times 2 is just 2x. Subtract these two, make sure you write your bracket there. It's negative 2x. Bring negative 4 downwards. Okay, next. Divide negative 2x with x. Your answer is negative 2. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. Subtract these two, write your bracket. The answer is 0. Remember, when the remainder is 0, that means we are doing the right thing because we want to factorize everything. Remember, when the remainder is 0, then our quotient terms will be the factors of the polynomial. Remember, the question wants you to factorize completely. So this is not enough. We have to write down the divisor multiplied with the quotient. Okay, write it down and remainder is 0. Now, since this is a quadratic, you can factorize it by using your calculator. But what if the calculator gives you Ri or something like that, or with I in your calculator? That means this quadratic term cannot be factorized. So your final answer will be left until here, this step only. But if let's say you can factorize it and there's no Ri like this on your calculator, then you have 3 linear factors. Look at the question again. The question wants you to factorize completely and write its zeros. So we have factorized it completely, but we have not write down the zeros. So the zeros are just taking the numbers out without the x. Remember, when you have x equal in front, that means we are talking about the zeros. So do not write x equal in front because this is the roots. So zeros are just negative 2, negative 2 over 3, and 1 over 2. Just write the numbers. Remember, root zeros are just the numbers without the x equal. Now, example 5. Please try this question out and we'll discuss in the next lecture.